Hello everyone, you are on the Éveil des Consciences platform. America having been greatly outpaced, America which wanted to be a bit more diplomatic towards the Russian Federation, America which refused to take a stand when Russia carried out painful strikes on Ukraine, America and other Western allies have just broken their reserve, their silence. America, which had chosen to remain silent, America is breaking its own principles in the face of the scale of the massive strike that Russia carried out this Sunday, May 25th, 2025, on several regions of Ukraine. We discussed this in the previous video conference. Russia is intensifying its actions in Ukraine. More than 30 cities were bombed. And the problem is that several types of missiles were used and nearly 300 drones were deployed. As a result, even Ukraine's allies were stunned. They were shocked. They were left speechless. So they hesitated before responding, which provoked a reaction, Zelensky's anger, who accused them of maintaining a guilty silence in the face of a truly dangerous act that had taken place on his territory. And so, it must be said, it should be recalled, at the very moment he made his statement, America responded immediately, and no one could have imagined that Donald Trump and his administration would respond so forcefully as we have seen. Donald Trump and his administration have been courting Russia, trying to win Russia over in order to gain access to the rare resources and immense potential that Russia possesses in terms of rare earths and business opportunities. So America responds forcefully. What is the American response? America first condemned and called for an immediate ceasefire. The first statements from the United States of America, the initial declarations from American authorities were made by Keith Kellogg. Keith Kellogg, who is, of course, one of the authorized spokespersons for the United States of America, described these attacks as shameful. He said these are shameful attacks. And it's not just the Americans. Germany will also respond forcefully. The European Union has also reacted in such a way that one wonders, what will they do by tomorrow morning? What decisions will they make? Because as they impose sanctions, as they go along, they intensify the sanctions. And Russia also intensifies its actions on the ground. Keith Kellogg, on behalf of America, declares that these are shameful attacks and a clear violation of the Geneva Protocols of 1977. And the Geneva Protocols of 1977 are intended to protect innocent people. So for America, innocent people are being attacked on Ukrainian territory. Russia no longer distinguishes between civilians and military targets. Keith Kellogg, on behalf of America, of Great America, has called for an end to the killings. He says this must be stopped. He says an immediate ceasefire must be put in place. The problem with this ceasefire issue is that Russia is completely opposed to it. Russia will only accept a ceasefire on one condition, but it is a condition deemed unacceptable by Ukraine. So America is very upset. So the fact that they remained a bit silent at first, Zelensky criticized that. He criticized it. But afterwards, others began to raise their voices. So Zelensky, he first reminded that the silence of the Allies encourages Vladimir Putin. He himself forgets that it is the intensification of sanctions. They have adopted the 17th package of sanctions. They have adopted the 18th package of sanctions. The intensification of anti-Russian sanctions pushes Vladimir Putin to intensify his strikes on the ground. This is the part they still haven't understood. Zelensky called for stronger sanctions against Russia. Yet, as the sanctions become even stronger, Russia will intensify its strikes to an even greater degree. So things are going from bad to worse, from bad to worse. It's a competition of getting worse and worse, if we can put it that way. So, what needs to be said, what also needs to be added, is that the European Union has stepped up. This was through the head of European Union diplomacy, the one known as Kaja Kallas. It's always worth mentioning that she's a woman with a shaved head, meaning in her mind she's hollow. She is not involved in Vladimir Putin's affairs. She is not involved in Russia's affairs. As a result, most of the decisions made by this woman are extreme decisions, truly extreme. These are somewhat more radical decisions. So, Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, in a public statement to the media, called this Sunday for the strongest possible international pressure to be exerted on Russia. Because this attack resulted in 12 deaths. So, she says that the strongest possible international pressure must be used. But one wonders to what extent and what kind of pressure these people actually want to put on Russia. Since the 18th package of sanctions, the 17th package of sanctions, they adopted it. How long ago was that even? It was the 16th. No, it was the 18th, right after, after the failure of the Istanbul negotiations. They adopted that on the 18th, 19th. What day is it today? 25, 26. They have already prepared the 18th package of sanctions, which is ready to be implemented. And in this 18th package of sanctions, they included a lot of things, notably removing Russia from SWIFT, which is the system used by banks. So it's meant to further isolate Russia, but all of that doesn't mean anything to Russia. Russia continues. So Germany, the German Chancellor I've spoken to you about regularly, I told you that this gentleman was not happy. He is very agitated. Germany has also made a statement. They say that we must be determined. Ukraine's allies must be determined. The German government, according to official information, has called on Kiev's allies to respond with determination. As if the actions of these last few days were done without determination, But in fact, they are determined. They hold meetings in Brussels. They hold meetings in Paris. They hold meetings in Berlin. They even hold meetings in Kiev, all of that. That doesn't show that they are determined. So, he says it's a record number. He says what happened today in Ukraine is a record number. He goes on and says, Russian President Vladimir Putin is trampling on human rights. It's an affront, including to American President Donald Trump, who did so much to bring Putin to the negotiating table. So Germany was using his statements to once again convince the United States of America to get involved in the fight against Vladimir Putin and Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the headline news. So thank you for playing your part, as I mentioned in the previous video conference. If you've noticed over the past 24 hours in the video conferences, I no longer ask you to share the video or to like it or anything like that. I don't ask you that anymore, because when you take a break, it interrupts the feed. So, it's still up to you to play your part. You know that by sharing, liking, and leaving comments, it gives the video conference more visibility. So, I do my best to satisfy you. I would also like you to do your best to keep supporting me, as you always have. So, thank you to each and every one of you. This was the voice of the one and only Samurai.